And we have a lot to cover. I'm going to be sharing my screen. So I'm going to do that and I'm right here. Okay. So Shannon, are we looking at the right screen here for my cursor moving around?
Yep, everything looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Always good news, huh? So the topic for today is teaching yoga to support the aging process. And what I wanted to first ask you to put in the chat is what comes to mind when you hear the word aging? Just honest, what comes to mind when you hear the word aging? Love, wisdom. Oh, I love it. Okay, bones. Ha. Scoliosis. Let's see, what else? Gray hair, declining, posture, health, myself, more pain, adapting. And I have a question now. When I say the word aging versus senior, are they the same thing? Yes, no? Yeah, good. I think someone said, aha. So it wasn't a trick question, but it definitely, I think when we hear the word aging, we think of it's referring to a senior, and not necessarily, right? We're all aging. And I love creating webinars because it's how I learn. And when I was building this, it really came back to the foundation of what drives my practice and how I work with yoga therapy clients. And as I have become a senior, how I practice for aging. So it's interesting is aging and what comes to mind. So you already heard about me, and I love skeletons. So if you've ever in my studio, I think there's one in the corner over there. And so let's begin by, first of all, making sure that you're safe and you have the support and comfort you need. Because some of this you're going to be listening and sitting. And so feel free to move around. Feel free to stand and lie down, listen. Again, there is going to be a recording. You'll get this handout in a PDF. But honor your medical history. You're all unique. We're all unique. Honor your range of motion, things that you know about you that I don't and can't at this moment see. You can also use things in your home or wherever you are, props, walls, furniture. And also, some of you are students of yoga, maybe all of us. Some of you might be new to yoga, and many of you are trained to teach yoga. So I'd love to invite you to put a beginner's mind. So come into it with a beginner's mind, curiosity, and also courage. So take a moment. If it feels safe, close the eyes. Coming to a comfortable position. It might be a seat, it might be reclined. Pausing, arriving together. And I wish for you that you'll make this your own, into your own practice, share it with friends, loved ones, in your classes. Just wanted to also, a related topic, we do lots of workshops on osteoporosis and yoga, and we've got one coming in November. We give Biyogi discounts, of course. And I also always start by thanking my many teachers, many teachers. I think this course and really how we can really teach to positively impact aging is a yoga soup. It's a soup of all your experiences, and they're all important. So I wanted to thank many, many of my teachers. So I already asked you, what is aging? What is aging? And what we're going to talk about today, because we only have a short time together, so we could do this for like several weeks. So maybe there'll be a part 3 or 4. But how to modify movements for various body types, medical conditions like joint replacement, chronic illnesses, using props, and also we'll mix in here how really certain approaches work well with benefiting aging, and related to mobility and bone density, emotional well-being, and really the challenges that the idea of impermanence brings, and loss. So when I say the word wonder or awe, maybe close those eyes again or sit and let that come in. What is awe? What is wonder? And where do you feel it? Kind of notice where you might feel this in the body. How is it impacting your breathing, your digestion, your muscles? And how do you feel about this response? And what are the thoughts associated? And we'll check in with this again throughout our time together about the mind, body, heart, our thoughts, our layers and levels of sensation, and also our feelings. So let's jump into modifying movements for really supporting the aging process. It's common, at least when I first came into the yoga world, it was alignment-based yoga, related to the idea that I was working towards a peak pose that I could achieve, that was demonstrated by the teacher or was in the yoga journal or the books. And it was called, and sometimes you call this full expression. It's the idea of performing difficult poses. And with concentration and all those other elements of yoga, it was very geared towards where my hands are, where my feet are, how much I can rotate and turn. And in this world of thinking about aging, I know for me, many of the poses that I was able to do, I no longer can do from aging or do not want to do because of safety. And for some people, I hear them speak of this in a way that it's a loss. It's this awe or wonder that sometimes is related not to things that are new and exciting, but awe and wonder is very associated with aging, and loss, impermanence. So the idea that I couldn't do that anymore, and is it something I then should leave yoga and try a different modality? And sometimes I see people do that. So in the world of modern teaching positively to support the aging process, teaching from a functional approach is absolutely, for me, is what every class, every session is from this approach. So it's not alignment based, it's functional based on someone's skeleton, fascia, emotional constitution, their energy level, their association or their ability to interact with their subtle body, and then offer variations related to things that can benefit where they are right now and meet them at where they are with what they need physically, emotionally, or actually help them uncover it and offer some ingredients, and then work together to modify to still have what the intent of maybe the physical, the asana was for, related to maybe the target of it, the intention of it. Is it for balance? Is it for strengthening? Is it targeting a certain area in our physical body, for example? And invite, if it's welcome, more sensation. So I do a lot of languaging, like if it feels welcome, close the eyes. Or what would it be like to lift the arm more to the right? So there's a lot of helping people come inside and contemplate and observe and learn and explore. And I find for some people, the practice, I often am told it's more difficult related to sometimes physically, sometimes from the patient's place. So it draws out some of the feelings that are deep down that maybe not surfaced yet. This many times you're building this comfort level where these things start to surface. And hopefully it becomes a tool to take it into their day-to-day and apply it to their well-being. And in the aspects of what they're carrying, mind, body, heart, related to aging, arthritis, a new diagnosis, a loss of a partner. And this is a very mindful approach. One of the things I didn't really mention that is in the slide about the modern kind of alignment approach is it does cultivate, and even though we're asked not to do this, but it does cultivate comparing, judging, and trying to fix. So these three things that I like when people can know, actually it's on this slide. So functional yoga is hopefully liberating from the suffering that we can experience from comparing, judging, or fixing. We still will do this at times in our practices, but I'm hoping in this mindful, more of an observer approach, taking classes or offering classes, people will be watching and noticing that they're judging, they're comparing, they're trying to fix something, and then come back to their practice as being in the present moment and nourishing their tissues, their emotions, their observing thoughts. So this recognition is cultivating this deep wisdom of what's good for our well-being. And as we age, what comes up can be very different than when we were 20. So the focus of a functional approach to yoga is learning, exploring, repatterning. I like to notice when I'm going in a different pattern, I'm holding my shoulder up like this, and I didn't know. Or I'm in Shavasana, I'm very, very restless. I'm thinking about my business meeting in a few minutes. And I go, oh, but I have this time set aside. Let me come back. You know, those kinds of practices are so healthy for us. There's some great research found on the National Institute of Health for what I'm talking about is this time to simply be with our mind, body, heart. it helps us go into difficult situations or sad situations or things that are awe-provoking, that are sad, with more of this support, this courage, this compassionate approach. So mind, body, heart, building on these layers and layers of interaction. So the idea for positively supporting as we are teaching or taking yoga for the aging process, the idea I think that is really, I know I do, most of my community, I'd say the majority, are in the seniorhood, or if we say senior over 65. And I know that many folks are coming to yoga to help them do the things they want to contribute to their happiness as they age, and for those that they age with or that are in their life. Notice the gentleman on the right holding, I'm assuming, grandchild, and notice they're on their back. And that might just have been a coincidence, but in my world, I've often teach people, Sam, I can't pick up my grandchild anymore. How can I do that? So we brainstorm. So rolling on your back, supporting your spine, and then maybe lifting, okay? I have had clients that they want to lift their grandchild out of a crib and are having a hard time, for example. And how can we work with that? Is there a different scenario that we can create and offer? So in this model, it's a preventative model. So in this model, this functional approach, it is a preventative model related to cultivating more awareness to prevent falls, preventing those things that can happen to us that would take us away from the things we love to do. Or if those things occur, giving us that resilience or building that where we manage it and readjust like the person on their back, okay? So what we're gonna go into is the functional approach. We're going to use we're gonna go into a model that's very fascia driven in the functional approach to help us as a teacher. What would be my toolkit to help people cultivate these layers of sensation, awareness of feelings, and also thoughts? We're not trying to empty our mind. It's more working with the mind, body, heart all together and nourishing those three components. So fascia is a wonderful tool to help us do that. So in this course, we're going to use fascia concepts. And what I like to do is use the fascia planes, and you can adapt this to how you've learned fascia. But for me, I teach classes that impact the lateral body, the front body, the back body, the inner legs, the twisting fascia planes or lines, and the deep center fascia, and what I call it, and some of you are familiar with a spiral line. So in all my classes and in my sessions with folks, we use these fascia lines. Some people, I call them archetypes sometimes, and adapt them into the needs of the class. So the different variations, the different speed, sitting, or maybe we're on the floor the whole time. Some of you are yin teachers. Some of you are hatha yoga teachers. So, and then we take and use the archetype and make sure that we're introducing the benefit of the work we're doing, say in the lateral line. How does it benefit our energy body, our physical body? And what are some practices that we can blend in there that also then bring in the feelings that are coming up and also the thoughts? And when teachers are using these fascia planes, we need to know our population as best we can. Sometimes it's a community center, people are just walking in, but how can we adapt what we're teaching to the risks that may come with different types of movements or poses in these fascia lines. So we're not asking someone to be doing a lateral stretch and have their arm exactly in a certain way. It's more so, what would it be like to lift the right arm and let's targeting the right side? And where along the right side do you feel this? And if you were to rotate your rib cage, does it increase benefit or sensation that feels welcome? So we do a lot of exploration of moving and nourishing the body. And then again, it's all integrated together. So it's again, what fascia line can we use? What are the benefits that we can tie into it related to what it's nourishing in the physical body, as well as also the energy meridian lines, if that's part of your practice, and then as well as what would be the risks. That's the osteoporosis class, for example, of talking about how I would do a forward bend in an osteoporosis potential clientele versus not. Now, so in this approach to teaching and supporting the aging process, this model has a lot of assumptions that we have movement on a continuum. So there's sometimes we're actually offering stillness in poses to counter movement, to stretching and extending, to becoming sturdier, to becoming stronger. And sturdy and strong are different. So we do a lot of really reinforcing that people can learn out of the class that when they're doing their gardening, when they're doing their cooking, when they're with their grandkids, when they're lifting the grandkid above their head or, out of a crib, how can I do that with a way that I know my body works well and things that I know about my health that I can do a little differently. So hopefully this is an approach to meet every student where they are, not where you are offering and showing the most complex pose and then doing a series of poses to get them stretched out or introduced, and then finishing with the pose that you work towards. That's a technique that's quite common. Elements of that may still be beneficial, but the goal is different. It's not to achieve this most difficult pose. It's to maybe stretch the thighs before you would do a standing balance with a strap on your foot for like a dancer pose. Maybe you're going to introduce something on the floor first. So things that a teacher needs to be able to teach like this is a lot of education that we can't give in an hour session. But knowing the body systems, knowing the aging process, knowing the continuum of common medical conditions with aging, like osteoporosis, spinal stenosis, insomnia. These are things that your toolkit needs to get bigger and bigger. The more people I work with, the more I learn. And also, again, I thanked my teachers in the beginning. This is the lifelong learning. And again, fascial planes can be used very well in this approach. So this is not a fascia training, so there's tons of information to learn, and if you email me, I can give you recommendations of books and teachers, etc. But fascia is really a gift that we've learned so much more about fascia. Even the definition is still debated. But think of fascia from a physical side as packing, connectivity, the sturdiness, the integrity of our body. It also gives us glide and helps with pain. It gives us structure. It shows how we've been holding ourselves. So for example, if most of my 60 some years, I've been mostly sitting like this, eventually my superficial suit is going to hold me like this. So in this functional approach, I can quickly body read everybody in my class, especially one-on-one, even on Zoom, that are there things that this individual could benefit from because their front line is shortened, their back line is longer, their head is forward. Um, I love working with spirals. I read spirals in people all the time, and myself. Is the head turning mostly to one direction? Maybe the rib cage is going the other way. So the ideal of what can fascia teach us about an individual, even emotionally, is part of this practice. So the idea of fascia isn't just a physical helper as well. It has sensory refinement. What we've learned in the last 5 years or so is fascia is a new communication system. It's an extension of our nervous system. It does carry our emotions, our placement of maybe where we have buried some grief, some loss. So there's different reasons as we age why we might start to change how we're holding ourselves. Some of it is our fascia has started to form more on how we're holding our emotions, how we're holding ourselves, and not just how our bones are shaped. I think we're seeing this more in young people. Do you all agree? Any thumbs up out there? You can send a chat that because of our phones and our driving and our world is very, very forward. If you see posture, are you seeing more and more people that come into your classes that are forward necked, their hips are forward, their heart is slouched back, their knees are locked. And then sometimes you find folks come into class, they're in their toes because they're ready to go because they're always busy, or they're sad, they lost somebody, so they're sitting back in their heels. So when I come to class to teach, I might have an idea of what I might teach, but more than in the last 10 years, it's never what I intend because I wait till see who has arrived, and that becomes where I go with my fascia planes. Yeah. I love the comments. Thank you for that. So fascia reveals where we do and we don't do, what we do and don't do, what you don't move and what you move, what you hold and don't hold. If we teach our students this, not for them to judge themselves, but more so repattern. Fascia loves to be repatterned. And it takes about, the research changes all the time, 300 or more days, probably 300 to 500 days for fascia to reform where it's going to hold you differently for the kind of fascia that's in our muscles and our suit under our skin, even our organs. So, and the other thing is loading patterns. Where is someone loading their body? And maybe in your class, you want them to unload it. So for example, we call these shifts and tilts, okay? So in class, it's not uncommon for me to see someone who's like this and commonly like this, because what happened is they did this and this shoulder looks like it's dropped and it's not. It's because my rib cage, really my spine, has shifted, and they're going to keep doing this to try to fix it, and then it's going to start hurting in another part of their body. So the other thing is I want people to feel that they have this shift more so than me saying, you have a shift to the right. What would, let's shift back. It's more so as they do, for example, a rotation. So let's do this. If you're sitting, if you could sit, you could stand and do this too. Just quickly, I'll be your mirror, bring your left hand forward. And as the other hand can maybe just rest. Actually, let's bring it on the heart. But I want you to see me because I want you to see my ribs. Actually, we're going to bring it on the leg because I want you to not hide your spine. So your arm is out, and you're going to have your nose follow your thumb, and you're going to start rotating the rib cage. And then you'll use the muscles to rotate the rib cage. And notice if you're feeling any, what I called a shift or a tilt in the ribs. And then once the rib cages can't go any further, you're going to let the hand keep going till the peripheral vision can still see the thumb. The neck might be turning, it just depends. And I'm not pushing with my free hand here, it's just resting. And then you close the gate. So opening the gate. And what I see a lot, or invite people to feel, is are they shifting to do this turn? So a lot of folks rotate open, and it actually doesn't feel really good in my SI here. So they shift, or they're tilting to do their turn. Or their arm is going back and they didn't do any movement. So identifying when people aren't moving, and if they're moving, are they moving in a way they don't know? Okay. So in this type of practice, the cultivation of where people are moving and not moving functionally is very important for the aging, healthy aging. The other thing is load patterns, as I mentioned, where you can have people feel that when they're in mountain pose, are they putting more weight on the right foot versus the left foot? In bridge pose, more weight on right or left. And so you're doing these types of invitations to have people learn more about how they're holding their body and using their body. Now, the reason fascia, again, is so good for working with the aging process, increasing awareness and space, mind, and internal sensations, increase flexibility. It does, working with the fascia and the different lines, we can start to feel and see benefit where we might feel more sticky on one side versus another. Sturdiness. The idea that fascia, I like to equate it that we are a bunch of rubber bands in our body, and that when those rubber bands are not activated or stressed, they get floppy. And in aging, they can also get brittle. So like rubber bands that have been in a drawer for a long time and they've got a fray. So for those type of rubber bands, they need a little bit of glide or oiling, and that's what working with fascia does. So it also helps nourish our nervous system, our layers and layers within the body. So good for pain management. So helps with posture. My goal is it builds this confidence and this awareness of where I am, and helps me so I won't fall or less likely to injure myself when I'm using a knife. Because we have decreased senses with aging, right? So maybe hearing, eyesight. So this is really training up those accessories that can help and balance that out. The other thing is that happens a lot in classes is people are coming back from having a fall. They've had surgeries, they've had major stress, or also maybe they've lost something, a loved one. So it can really, this type of practice is very good at supporting recovery. Okay, so the fascial planes, and this is Sam's fascial planes adapted from Paul Greeley and Susie Greeley's work, also from Anatomy Trains, from Sarah Powers and the Meridians, and so much more, subtle body work. What I find with movement and with a functional movement approach, my fascial planes are 7. So I'm gonna, let me stop sharing for a second and you see me, okay? So let me, I think I can, I think one of y'all can spotlight me, can't you? Can you do that? I think I can pin it to the first screen too. Does that work for everyone? All right. So we're gonna stand up together, or you can just listen. But I'd like to go through these planes. So the lateral plane is side body, okay, anything side body. So it could be anything that you're doing for the shoulders, the neck. So, we've seen some, it depends on the clientele of how this might work in their body. It's also anything that's related to the lateral body, which also means the lengthening and stabilizing in the lateral body has anything to do with outer hips, okay? So there's lots of yoga poses, many yin, many yang poses, standing movement. So definitely lateral practice. And then, and I find lateral practice is very good for high intensity stress situations because of the meridians that run through these as well, and also how we hold our attention in our modern day. And then there is the front body. So anything that is stretching the tops of the feet, the shins, the legs, the back, the belly, and the front of the throat, okay? So that's front line. And in front line, I'll show you an example of where in a yin class, if you're teaching a yin class and you expect somebody to come down into saddle pose, and majority of my population, I would not show them that pose for the class. What I would do instead is say the props that you think you need to be on your shins to do some stretching of your legs. For example, it might be that my population is going to be here, and it might be high enough that they can find their front line shin pose. This could be seated in a chair, which happens on Tuesdays for me with my joint freeing class. So they're not on the ground, they're on a chair, and they're bringing their foot back like a warrior one in a chair, basically, okay? So then that's the front line. The back line is the stretching of the back body, and we think of various poses for that. And in the osteoporosis workshop that we do, one of the things that you won't see in our classes at Dogwood is Uttanasana in more of a traditional sense. So this is something that we don't do in our classes, even the classes that are vigorous. They don't miss it though, because in osteoporosis, it's loading the front of the spine where most of the time the bone density is compromised. So in that case, instead of loading the front body, we come into chair pose instead, and we flow around it. So we functionally are working to have folks be more sturdy. And now look how I bent down to move my blanket as well. So instead of, we teach people as they age not to bend over like this. We teach them to bend like this. So in class, we purposely have stuff all over the place and have people walk around and do their squatting, okay? And then inner leg standing, inner leg seated. A lot of seniors, when we get more and more, it's hard to sit to do the dragonfly or the inner legs. So you functionally figure that out and get the same benefit. Twists, there's aging things that are happening that sometimes we really need to identify what are variations and twists to get the same benefits, and maybe not as deep. And then the deep center is our core. And in the fascial world, the deep center starts in your inner feet and travels all the way up your inner legs, and then up through your spine and ends in the side of your face. So we really cultivate people being able to find these deep lines. And spiral's the most fun line. Those of you that take my class we we do a lot of spiraling. So I'll use that as an example in a few minutes. So in this approach to yoga, supporting healthy aging, doing it from a functional approach, using the tool of the fascial planes, incorporating mind, body, heart because of the qualities of fascia that help support this, and also in an environment where we can give lots of suggestions and modifications and variations. So it's not taught to where my hand should be and where my foot should be. There are many bones and many folks that have fascias held them in such a way that their knee will never track over their toe. So it's something you won't hear me say in my class, is that make sure that knee is in the same direction as your toe. We just have too much torsion in our bones, etc. So there's a lot of other considerations. I more so want them to feel that they're strengthening their hip by using their rotators. And do they feel the stability that happened in the inner leg by bringing it to a certain angle? And where do they feel sturdy enough to be lifting off? Okay. Thanks, Erin. Thanks. I saw that comment. Yeah. And there's lots of old rules that, I could send you some articles about some research that's been done. So this is a practicum I invite you to do. Is you're going to choose one of the fascia planes. And let me show you this worksheet that's in your slides you're going to get. So if you want to build your practice on your own, or you're teaching, and how do I kind of explore functional poses that fit into these planes? So the lateral plane is pigeon as an example. And it can be on your back with your feet up on a wall, crossing your leg. It can be more traditional, what we might see with the leg, being prone with the leg coming forward. But there's no requirement to have that shin be parallel with the front of the mat. So those cues go away. So where they should have their foot is not in my repertoire. It is inviting. What would it be like if the knee moved out to the side a little bit? And that's coming from watching their body, is my suggestion. And by working with so many bodies for so long. I gave you an example for saddle is one of those examples of, I'm not teaching to see if they can ultimately get into a saddle someday, which was the pose I went down and kind of flopped on my back. How my fascia and my bones are, it's not because I've been practicing a long time, especially as we age, that pose does, if we look at the pose goal, it would not work for many, maybe over half the population in most classes. So, but think of the front line is so important to open. Our life is like this most of the time, right? So every day folks need to be opening their front line. So inner legs, but let me go to spiral. Okay. So spiral is related to, there's two spiral lines. And again, this class won't teach the lines, but the spiral line is on both sides. And it is the line that contributes, when it's not balanced, it contributes to scoliosis, the adult onset version, where folks get scoliosis as we age. And the spiral line is something that when it's not held pretty balanced on each side, the rib cage gets pulled over, the rib cage turns, the pelvis might turn a different way. So, and the head will try to compensate. So again, the head, the ribs, and the pelvis really want to work as a team. And so a lot of the functional approach uses these weights. And then they use the functionality of the arms and the legs. But the neck, the shoulders, and the knees are not a lot in the equation in a functional approach. They're considered connectors. they're connectors. They're not really what we go, oh, make sure your knee is here, make sure your neck is here, make sure your shoulders are here. Not really at the focus of a functional approach. They follow along again with the big weights. So it's more so, how am I holding my head that's affecting my neck, or my rib cage affecting my spine, or my pelvis affecting my knees, or my feet, for example, too. All right. Let me have you, and if you want to work, do this with me, I'm going to go over to my mat again. Oh, actually, you know what I'm doing? I'm not sharing. Make sure I'm sharing my slides too. This is the worksheet I was talking about. I want to make sure you can see that. So this is the worksheet where here's a practicum that I've provided that you can play with to practice and using this type of functional approach. And here's all of the different fascia planes. And you would identify what poses, and there's a whole bucket of poses that you can put in your repertoire for lateral and also movements. And what are some variations? Like I mentioned, pigeon in many different ways, maybe on your back, for example. Great for folks with osteoporosis. And then modifications. Do they need props? Do they need anything like that? And here's the spiral line. And I know the folks that work at the studio with me, we do a lot of training on the spiral line, or they'll see it a lot. So let me, I think you can see me okay. So the spiral line is the idea that our head, our arm, our ribs, our leg, and our pelvis all work together to move. So that's got me into Warrior 2. And then to get back, I need to pivot and start pivoting the foot, turning the pelvis, turning the ribs, arm and face, and I come back where I came. So in real life, if we don't keep spiraling like we did when we were an infant rolling over, we're more likely to fall. So for example, if I were to needing to step back from here and I don't spiral, I would then twist my knees and maybe fall. Okay, so I'm not using the weight of my body. So especially when people are talking and they all of a sudden something they see over there, this is where they get off kilter and they fall down. So instead, if I were to wanting to step back here, I would want somebody naturally to start spiraling their body and lifting and coming open. That's why Warrior 2 is a really important pose for aging. And then to get back, I've got to start to work as a team with my weight and my body. Now we can make it a little more interesting, maybe bringing the foot up in the air and then turning the head over the shoulder, keeping my balance, because that's real life. I'm going upstairs and I'm turning my head to talk to someone and I got to keep my balance. So if I then come from here, look over my shoulder and I step back, I'm in Warrior 2. And then again, we're going to come back. Maybe I'll come back to my knee lift. Okay? So that's one spiral line, and the spiral line crisscrosses the body. And then I guarantee folks on the other side will have, one side is harder. So in a functional approach, the side that is less familiar, less sturdy, less strong, you want your clients to explore it more. They're not working that side enough. They're not living in it enough. So the spiral line related to seated is, we're here. Tip my camera down a little bit. So if I were to spiral to go to hands and knees, So we have spirals here too. So this is a spiral. I'm spiraling my body. And I need to spiral to sit down. Spiral my body. And then come to sit down. So what a lot of folks do is they're off this bolster. And they try to come up on the bolster like this with their arms. And one, is not good for our spine, not good for our shoulders. So teaching people to spiral. And the spiraling is really, you can do it from your belly to a seat, seat to knees, knees to stand, stand to warrior two, all those kinds of things. Okay. Let me see if a question came in. Yeah, no, we're doing good so far. So let me go through a few more things here. All right. Any questions, put them into the chat. See if I've missed any. So we've gotten through kind of the foundation of what would be this approach to teaching that supports healthy aging. So fascia driven, mind, body, heart, and functional. Now propping, you know, where you bring your hands and feet aren't really related to alignment in a functional approach. Where they're, what they do is they're like a prop themselves. So where you bring your hands and feet or ask your students to or suggest them to is more to increase intensity or decrease intensity, or to help them find the target. How far their feet are apart. Are the feet turned or in? And in those that teach yin, probably you're very familiar with this, is it can change the where you feel the pose, where you're benefiting from the pose. So it's a lot of exploration for sure. And it really helps us with skeletal variation. Now, related to common conditions in propping, I mentioned bone density. More and more individuals are being diagnosed with osteopenia, osteoporosis. Maybe it's because we have some more screening going on. But the load, I had mentioned to you definitely the idea of loading into the front of our spine, but being trained on how to work with low bone density for those teachers working and supporting healthy aging is really important. So definitely using chairs and counters and blocks. The other thing is hands, wrists, thumbs, and hips for the arthritis. Having props for the hands, like in plank, offering forearms. Sometimes forearms are worse for some populations that because of arthritis in the neck. Positioning of the hips. I know from my aging, I have less ability to do certain poses right now because they don't feel good. They used to feel great. And now from my arthritis in one of my hips, it feels like I'm injuring myself. So teaching folks to listen to that and is in what I do instead. So for example, like in yin, a shoelace pose, I would do on my back now, and I get great benefit, but I can't do it seated on one side. Vertebral compression and also sacrum compression from sitting a lot in our life or from some fusion that happens as our spine is we want to do some lovely movement practices that are gentle with our rib cage and our pelvis. And you want to be able to do this massaging over the sacrum is super important for a healthy aging. I talked about twist variations and joint replacement. How I was just doing spiraling is how I work with joint replacement a lot, is how do I get up and down from the floor and do it from a functional way, especially if I have one-sided, I have one hip replacement, for example. Let me check, because I know related to time, I want to look at the any chats that came in to answer a few questions here. I'm just trying to, there you go. I found them. Okay. Yeah. Very good. No, just mostly saying, will I get the replay? The spiral lines crossing the body. Yeah, actually, in this class, we don't have time to go over and map each line, but the spiral line is probably the lines that are least familiar with folks that have done most common training with maybe anatomy trains or with the meridians. But the spiral line, for example, starts in the back of your occipital ridge and then crosses down the back and goes under this armpit and over the belly and down the opposite leg. That's how crazy it is. And it lands in the arch of your foot. So not in this class, but in a spiraling workshop, we would map that on your body. We would draw it on your body. Okay. So then you would go, oh, if my rib cage is mostly like this, my spiral line on one side is floppy. So I'm always falling over. If people are like in a tree pose and they constantly are falling on one side and the other side, they're really sturdy, I look at their spiral line, and you can see it in different parts of how they're holding ribs, pelvis, and head. And then again, it's having them find where they're not moving, where they're more sticky, and nourishing that. And a lot of times they'll notice these are spaces they might have been holding sadness. So for example, I had breast cancer in 2021. I had radiation on my left side. I know I'm holding lots of stuff here, not just the changes that happen in my body, and the confidence I have on that side, or even the movement is less. So those are things that this approach is super trying to cultivate. Just the last thing, the biggest tip for a functional approach for working with everybody is bringing the floor up. So a lot of folks, the floor is too far away for whatever reason. The fascia is sticky, knee replacements. So bringing a bolster so your head can be on it in child's pose. Or I'll show you what's in my room here. I have a table. Hope you can see it. So I have a table in the corner that for folks that can't get up and down from the floor, we do all our floor up here. So I hope you can see it, but it's like a big massage table that's sturdy and wide. But we have to bring the floor up. So using a block under their hand. When we do spiral work, a lot of times we start people with a block to spiral, because especially when we're going from standing to kneeling. All right. And when you get the slides, you're going to see some really cool things about osteoporosis, adult onset scoliosis, some different kinds of things that we use for downward facing dog, for example, for wrists. This is bringing the floor up, right? This is, I think I'm still sharing, maybe not. Oh, I am, good. Bringing the counter is such a great downward facing dog, and building awareness for folks of how they're holding their rib cage versus their head versus their pelvis. Yeah. So I know we're running over, and I did get, Shannon said that sometimes that happens and it would be okay. So I've talked about all these things that I'm strolling through. Yeah, actually I have. There's another homework assignment in there, but it's really just like the one that I provided the table in for you to kind of build a functional toolkit. But it's good to have a practice that in each class you may not touch on every fascia plane. It's likely you are, but I mean, focusing for the cultivation of awareness. That might be how I might do a theme is let's really let's spend some time in our front line today. um, but yeah, let me see. I'm going to stop sharing, and I hope this is a big topic, right? So I'm hoping that this is giving you some really good things to now put into your own practice and how you would do it. Yeah. So thank you, Shannon. Thank you. And
Thank you
thank
so much, Sam. What an insightful webinar. Thank you again so much for hosting with Byogi. Always love to have you. A lot of really great interaction with the chat. Just a reminder to everyone, the recording will be sent to you via email. If you registered for this webinar, obviously you did. So with that email, it will be sent to you by tomorrow with the slides included and other information from Sam and Dogwood Studios. So thank you again so much, Sam. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.
thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.